Oh, okay. Welcome back to another design video. This will be my second video while I'm designing with me on the screen. Anyways, this is a 6-unit veneer case, crown. Let's see. Yeah, it's like a 6-unit veneer case. Just want to record this one. I think that along the process of designing this case, I'm going to be able to show you guys a couple tips and tricks that I use when I'm designing these types of cases. You guys may find some of these tips and tricks useful. So, I guess we could just dive right into it. Margins were already marked when this case was sent over. This case was sent to me. I'm going to design it and send the design back to the dentist for the dentist to mill these veneers and put them in the patient's mouth. But he already marked the margins for this, so that was taken care of. And I'll go back to the model phase to show you guys. And then I do double check everything when it comes in. But yeah, these are done. And this stuff is all pretty self-explanatory. Marking margins is the easy part of designing a case. But not always. Sometimes it can be difficult to spot those margins. And then we've already set our parameters. For the parameters of this case, because it's a veneer case, in administration I called them crowns because remember, if you call a veneer in the software, it will undermill the intaglio surface of that veneer, which will prevent the veneer from seating all the way, and that's just a mess. You don't want to be grinding on the inside of the veneer post-mill, and you definitely don't want to be grinding more on the tooth just to get the veneer to seat. So call it a crown, because if you do call it a crown, the mill is going to over-mill the inside surface of the veneer, making it easier to seat and giving it more of a passive fit. For the radial spacer, as some of you may know, I usually set my radial spacer and occlusal spacer to 120, but because this is a veneer and I want more spacer in there to ensure that the veneers properly seat on the preps, I increase the spacer only by 10. There were hardly any undercuts with this prep, fortunately. If there were some more severe undercuts, you had some more yellow showing if you're using CEREC software, or you had some more color showing on the prep if you're using the in-lab software. I would recommend to bump the spacer up to 140, 150. For this, 130 will do the job. And then as for minimal thickness, as some of you may know, I typically set my minimal thickness to 500 for both radial and occlusal. And then for the marginal thickness, I'll usually have that around 90 to 120 for your typical crown. But for a veneer, because things tend to get a little more thin, especially at the margin, just because typically with veneers, they're prepped more conservatively. I like to increase the marginal thickness just to ensure, just to double check that when that sucker is milled, it's going to mill and you're not going to have to deal with chipping at the margin, and you're not going to have to mill another veneer, wasting blocks, wasting money, wasting time. So set the marginal thickness up a little higher. And then as always, after we mark all these, or after we indicate all these parameters, we're going to check apply for similar restorations. What that's going to do is, and you have to do this. If you're not doing this, if you're not even really going into your parameters, please, when you get into the design phase, even if you have to go back after getting your initial proposal, which I think that's how it works in the CEREC software. I do use the CEREC software. I just don't know if mine's different than everyone else's, but it's weird. When I go from the model phase to the design phase, it goes right to the proposal without even allowing me to first check my parameters, adjust my morphology, and go into the positioning phase. It just gives you an initial proposal. So if you are working with the 4.6 software and it's that way for you, or even if you're in the 5.0 software and it's the same way, I recommend that after you get that initial proposal, go into your parameters, set your parameters, and after you've set your parameters for one tooth, click that apply to restoration or apply to similar restorations, and it'll apply those parameters to every restoration that is similar. I'm doing a lot of hand movements. I'm having a lot of fun. I feel real free right now. It's the day before Christmas Eve, so things are really slow right now in a good way, because last week was knucking futs. But I like that. Knucking futs. But anyways, this week is a little more mellow. I'm gonna enjoy my day tomorrow. I'm gonna enjoy my day off tomorrow, and then Christmas as well. Won't be working. The day after Christmas, I assume will be a bit crazy, but oh well. I'm very grateful for that. Nothing to complain about. We've set our parameters. We've chosen a morphology, and this is one of my go-to shapes, one of my go-to tooth shapes. I just don't get tired of it. It's the Mertz Artegral AFBI. Don't know what any of those words mean, but I do like this shape. And if you look at the opposing, you could see the shape of these cuspids, the bicuspids, and even all the anterior teeth, anterior incisors. They're all very similar to this morphology, and you can really see that when you look at the wear along the incisal edge. This is very common to see this. I like to replicate that on the opposing as well, and that's already integrated into the tooth shape, and that's the name of the game. When it comes to getting good software or good proposals with this software, you want to set up the software to give you a good proposal. The software, it knows how to shape a tooth. I mean, it gives you plenty of tooth shapes to choose from, and they're all beautiful tooth shapes. But in order to get those tooth shapes to translate to real life designs, you have to set it up in the software in the positioning phase. Let me show you what I mean. So we've chosen a tooth shape, and when you go into the positioning phase, you'll notice that the way I've positioned these teeth, just from moving around these teeth with the positioning tool and the scale tool, I've positioned them in a way that this shell of a tooth, I call it, this shell of a tooth in the positioning phase, it's just pretty much a blank. You want to line this up as best as you can with, with these margins. So let me decrease the transparency, and you could see that if you look at this margin, we've got the shell of these teeth lined up really close to the margin. Now we're going to focus on the facial margin, the mesial and distal margin when we're positioning these teeth and we're scaling these teeth. And when you are positioning these teeth and scaling these teeth, make sure that only one tooth is highlighted. You don't want to be moving all of them at the same time. So just double click on one of the teeth, and now you can see that only one is highlighted. And you want to work around minimal thickness while maintaining a good incisal edge position and ensuring that this shell of a tooth lines up with the margin. And if you can do all of those, which you can, if you just, you have to really focus on all of them at the same time. I've been asked this before, and it's like, okay, what do you do first? And then what do you focus on second in the positioning phase? And you're focusing on everything all at the same time when positioning a tooth. So oftentimes, you're going to be rotating and moving things in this direction because what you're trying to do is line up this incisal edge position and the top of this tooth with the margin all at the same time while ensuring that the shape of the tooth kind of works around your minimal thickness. Now, this could all be manually adjusted, and we're going to get to that now. So now that we've positioned our teeth, we're going to go into the design phase. And when you properly position the teeth, you can see that when you do move into the design phase, the software doesn't have to do much to merge this shell of a tooth with the actual prep to give you something that you can actually mill. So let me show you. These are the shell of the teeth. These are the shells of the teeth in the positioning phase. And when you move into the design phase, look at how little it has to do. If you just focus on the bottom 2/3 of the crown, everything will remain the same. The only thing that's going to change when you move into the design phase is going to be the top third portion of the crown, the part of the crown that has to actually merge with the margin. So everything 2/3 below is going to remain in the same position, and it's going to remain the same. So when it comes to finishing your design, all that you're really doing is, 1, refining contacts, 2, would be smoothing out this emergence area where you've got these discrepancies where the software had to merge the shell of the tooth to the margin. And then third would be maybe adding some of your own texture and anatomy to really make it unique and custom to that patient. So first things first, let's just work with the shape tool. After we get our proposals, let's work with the shape tool, individual, and let's fill in all this minimal thickness on the lingual. And remember, the minimal thickness is showing on the lingual because we didn't scale the tooth to meet the lingual margin. Because if we did do that, we would increase the width of the incisal edge, which would give us a not so aesthetic appearance. We want to keep this, and this incisal edge is already a bit thick because it's worn down. So if we did scale that back to fit the lingual, we'd have a really thick incisal edge. So just manually fill in the minimal thickness rather than trying to do that in the positioning phase. And if some of this may seem a bit advanced to you, it possibly is. If what I'm saying is kind of just going over your head and you're not really following along, I do recommend my online course. And in my online course, CERECacademy.com, I go into details I go into the same detail that we're going into in this video, but I also, in the beginning of the course, cover the basics so that, you can work your way up to the more advanced stuff rather than, because I would consider this video a more advanced video, just hearing myself talk and going over the techniques that we're going over. It is advanced stuff, but it's also simple stuff. And if you can understand the basics, this advanced stuff, it comes real easy. So yeah, let's get back to where we were. We're filling in minimal thickness. You could see that the only minimal thickness we're experiencing is on the cuspids. And that, it's not even that much. With the full coverage crown, you usually have more minimal thickness to fill in. Then this contact is not the easiest contact to fill in. You could see this space between the prep and this tooth. But we just did it. Now we're filling in the contacts. There's no real specific order to design these cases, or finish designing these cases. But what you're really going to be focusing on is 1, filling in the contacts, 2, smoothing out the emergence, and 3, refining the contacts, because you can fill them in like we're doing now, but even then, you still have to make them smooth and green. So we're just going to go around these contacts, fill them in, like we're doing right now. And we're filling them in from the lingual. I don't know if any of you have seen in my other videos. What I mean by filling them in from the lingual is actually looking at the design from the lingual aspect of the crown and then grabbing a portion from the lingual, because you could see what portion you're grabbing based on this orange circle. This orange circle is determining the size of the tool, and you want to make sure that the size is appropriate for the portion of the crown that you're trying to move or adjust. So like right here, this lingual portion, this would be an appropriate size. We're going to grab that portion and then pull it back. So that way we're filling in the contact from the lingual without changing the shape on the facial of the crown. Filling in the contacts. Okay, so contacts are filled in. You could see our midline isn't quite right, so we could fix that now, so we're not thrown off while we're designing this, but we will refine it in just a couple more steps. So our contacts are filled in. Let's look at them from the facial. Maybe this side could come over a little bit more right here. There. And what we're doing from the facial, we're not really necessarily filling in the contacts. They're already in contact. We're just refining the embrasure where they meet. So we get a nice embrasure form, and it just, adds to the natural appearance of the crowns. Then you can see we've got some minimal thickness here. Let's just fill that in. That's not much at all. So you can literally just take a shape tool and bump it out, and it's taken care of. One thing about this shape that I like to adjust manually are, one, the cuspids. I think that they're too sharp. But if you look at the lower cuspids, they've got that same kind of appearance, like a flatter facial surface, and they've got like a sharper edge to them. Typically, well, you're going to see this on cuspids because they're worn down. And if you look at the shape of these cuspids, they are worn down at the incisal tip. So that's kind of why you've got that sharp appearance. But if you want to soften that up, I would just take, you could do one of two things. You could actually remove that worn down appearance by taking the shape tool and bumping it out right here. You could do that to soften it up and then make some more adjustments from the facial. Or just try and flatten things out from this angle. See, and it's kind of taking away that real V kind of shape, and it's making it more curved, like so. We could curve up the facial surface a little bit, just using the shape tool. The same thing over here. And sometimes you get these adjustments wrong. I often anticipate that I'm going to get something wrong. And then what you do is you just undo what you've done and then retry. And to undo like something that you've done with a certain tool, just undo it. Now, when you switch tools and then go back to that tool, you won't be able to undo what you did with the previous tool. So if you want to undo something, undo it immediately. Unfortunately, it's going to undo everything that you've done with that tool during that time that you've used that tool. So say you do something with the tool that you really like. For example, you've brought out this portion with the shape tool, and now you're about to do something that you don't know if it's going to work or not. What you can do is just switch tools, then go back to the tool, and when you do that thing that you're iffy about, if you don't like it, you can undo it, and you still won't have undone what you did like that you did with that tool. I hope that made sense. This day off is starting to get to me. I can feel myself having more and more brain farts, but oh well. Another thing that I'm not crazy about with this shape is on the laterals. You can see that at the mesial and incisal edge, it kind of comes in a little bit, and you've got that indentation right here. It's the same over here. So what you could do is take the four-directional individual or four-directional circular shape tool, as I call it, grab that portion, grab that mesial and incisal portion, and bring it over just like that. And you can see now we've kind of brought it more, we've kept it more in line with the rest of the contour line or the rest of the line angle. But maybe you want to leave it in like that, or maybe you want to bring one over and leave one kind of coming in like this. You can see this one coming in where this one stays in line with the rest of the contour line. Maybe you want to create those asymmetries that make teeth appear more natural. So I think that we've done that over here with the cuspids, and that was intentional. This one's, it's got a sharper tip right here, and then it's more curved right there. Where on this side, it's kind of just curved all the way across. And that's actually something that I noticed in the shower with my own teeth. I was looking at my teeth in the mirror because I have a mirror in my shower. That's how I shave my head. And I noticed that my cuspids, one is like this, and one is like this. Now, I'm not trying to give this person my teeth, but I just do like seeing those natural asymmetries, and I think that it does make these monolithic restorations pop more and make them appear more natural, because it's really easy to end up with a fake looking tooth if you're working with a monolithic monochromatic ceramic block that's just simply spray glazed. Nothing wrong with that, but to really bring those crowns to life, it's good to add make the shape of the teeth really pop. Where sometimes you can get away with maybe the shape not being completely ideal if you're layering, because when you're layering, you're creating intrinsic values that make them appear more natural. So there's got to be something that makes them appear natural. And when it comes to monolithic monochromatic restorations, I think that it's the shape and the facial anatomy that really make those types of crowns appear more natural. Feel free to agree to disagree, or feel free to disagree, but that's just my opinion. And with a monolithic restoration, yes, of course, you can always stain and glaze, and that'll add some natural value, natural chroma to the teeth. But why not? Why not make the shape and the anatomy natural or appear natural as well by throwing in those subtle asymmetries? By throwing in those subtle asymmetries, you really can't go wrong. They're usually so subtle no one even notices, but there are things that I notice, and that's one of them. So now that we've got kind of our shape dialed how we want it, we've got our embrasures the way that we want them, our contacts are filled in, we could start going around the crowns with the smooth tool and start smoothing out the emergence and start refining the contacts. And then this case is done. It's that simple. This case right here would have probably taken 15 to 20 minutes from the beginning of the design phase to the end of the design phase. But because we're chit-chatting, I guess I'm talking. But because we are chit-chatting, it did go by a little bit slower. So what I mean by refine the emergence or smooth out the emergence, take your form smooth tool, decrease the strength so you maintain control of what you're trying to do. And let's tackle these teeth one at a time. So let's start working on this emergence. And as we work on this emergence, we're also shaping our contour line and line angles. So you could see that while we're smoothing out the emergence, we're moving the line angles. So we're killing two birds with one stone, smoothing out the emergence and refining the line angle. And there's a minimal thickness bubble that started to show. So I just took the shape tool and brought that out real quick. But now right back to where we were. Smoothing out the emergence. And then rather than going to the shape tool to fill in a minimal thickness area near the margin, sometimes it's good to just use the add tool. You could stay within the same tool and just switch to add. Just going around the margins, we're going around the emergence, making sure that after this baby mills, it's going to look real nice and real in line with the rest of the tooth or with the prep. You don't want to see any transition from the veneer or from the prep to the veneer. You want it to just be seamless. And that's why we're going around it with the smooth tool. Just adding a little bit more with the shape tool. Now onto the lateral, and we're just going to do this all the way across to the last canine or cuspid. I usually don't say canine, I usually say cuspid, but sometimes that word will slip out of my mouth, canine. Even decrease the strength a little bit more, all the way down, why not? Total control. Then if you look at the contour line from this angle, so we're looking at the lateral from like the side profile view, you could see that this mesial contour line or this mesial line angle kind of has an indentation right here, which is common with this shape that we've picked. So you could just bump that out real quick with the shape tool by looking at it from that angle. See, if you were to look at it from this front view, you wouldn't be able to see that indentation, nor would you be able to accurately adjust that contour line with this tool. So look at it from that angle and then make the movement. Look at it from these angles. This is looking good. Looking good. And then if you really wanted to, I don't even typically do this unless I'm in a hurry, but you can refine this emergence and do your contacts at the same time. So, you know, the contacts that are unselected right now in the analysis tools right here, but if they were selected, we could technically do our emergence and our contacts at the same time. But I like to keep the contacts away till the end because sometimes the contacts get in the way of what you're trying to fix and you can't really see everything. You can't really see where there's even a problem sometimes. So by having the contacts unselected, you could see all the little discrepancies. On to the next central. Let's save our work so we don't lose anything. And I need to check my phone. Okay. Back to our form tool, smooth. I'm just going around these margins. And whenever you're adjusting an area with the shape tool, always double check the size of the tool. Always make sure that the size of the tool fits the portion that you're trying to adjust. So say we're trying to adjust it from, if you follow my cursor, from here to here, make sure that the size of the tool fits that area. And then make your adjustment. On to the next. See right here. Smooth. Just working around those margins. And then something's off with this distal contour line, and you could see that by following the reflection. So you kind of got this wave right here. So take your smooth tool and adjust it on that portion to bring it more in line. Now you can see that contour line is nice and straight rather than wavy. Okay, now to the cuspid, our last tooth. And then after we've got the emergence all contoured and smoothed out the way we want it, we'll bring the upper jaw back in, do one last final analysis, check the contacts, and then we're done. Get it from the front. And when we click this front button, it's showing the teeth from the view that we've set in the model axis phase. So front. I don't like this contour line right here, so I'm going to take the smooth tool and kind of move it over, just like that, just that simple. I see some indentations here that I'm not crazy about, but sometimes it's just the way your prep is shaped, where the margin's located, kind of limits what you can do in certain areas like that. We can maybe do this out a little bit right there. Get rid of that indentation. Okay, and our embrasures still look good. Maybe after smoothing it, we could still fill in some contacts a little bit. I notice some maybe right here. Contact right there. contact right there. Then contact right there. Now let's go in with our smooth tool again. This is the last thing we've got to do. Make these green, smooth and green. And another thing to remember, other than smooth and green, is vertical. So you could see that now this interproximal contact is vertical. Do the same thing over here. We want them vertical so that the interproximal contacts just form right into each other and it creates a nice embrasure. We're going to do the midline last, so let's skip the midline. It doesn't look like we have much to do anyways. You don't want any of these interproximal contacts, if you look at them from this angle, to be convex or concave. You want them to be nice and vertical. That way you can seat any one of them at any time also. That sucker green. And sometimes these contacts, you just gotta leave the occlusal contacts the way that it is. You could see that here on the prep, you've even got some red, so there's no way we're gonna be able to fix that. We can try and fix this right here. We're not gonna be able to fix that. It's gonna impinge on our minimal thickness. And I know that because you can see the contact on the prep. If there's contact on the prep, we're for sure going to have it on the crown. See red right there? We're not going to be able to fix that. But this design is almost done. Just the midline. Left. Contact. Now, usually when there's like a lot more color on the midline, I would use the form tool and apply symmetric, but because there isn't that much color, I just lightly tapped the smooth tool on those spots of yellow, just going back and forth, and I'm sure that our midline's going to be fine. Maybe not though, let's see. Yep, and then let's check the grid. It might be canted a little bit this way, but it's not something that is worth even touching, to be honest. Not for the sake of this video, at least. Then with the anatomical tool, I just double checked the symmetry of 8 and 9. So we're definitely going to have some contact over here now because of that. We'll remove it from the lateral. Remove some from the lateral, but maybe not all of it. Let's remove this contact from the lingual. We're going to look at the tooth from the lingual and make sure that none of this orange is touching the facial surface. And that's how you remove a contact from the lingual. So now we've got a green contact by removing it from the lingual, but yet the facial surface is still the same. Or the shape from the facial is still the same. So from the front, that's a done design, folks. That is finished. I hope that you got something out of this video. Maybe my energy wasn't quite up to par. I'm like feeling it. I've got the electric fireplace on, so I'm really relaxed. I'm in my zen. Haven't had much coffee, but I still think that there was a lot of value in this video, so I'm going to post it. If you have any comments or if you'd like a video more geared towards something else, rather than just maybe multiple unit anterior cases, let me know. Comment below, like the video, do all that, subscribe. I'm going to continue to pump out these videos, but that's the end of this. Done design. I'm out.